What's going on, Internet? This is Mike with everydaycarryconcealed.com coming at you with a field strip video. So today we're actually going over the Walther PK380. This is my Walther PK380. It currently is my everyday carry pistol. I like it because it is slim. It's very small profile, single stack magazine, and that makes it very easy to conceal. It's also more ergonomic than some of the other pistols. So when I first purchased the pistol, I was having problems along the way, and there weren't a lot of very good instructions on this pistol. And so I wanted to cover features of the pistol that you may not be familiar with. Obviously the process of field stripping, but there are also some areas where you may have hang-ups. And I wanted to give some sort of tips and tricks on that. So hopefully this video is a little bit clearer because I changed my setup and you guys get something out of it. So without further ado, let's start going over the features of the PK380 that are a little bit different than some of the other handguns that I've handled. There's three things that I want to cover. The first is the safety. The second is the mag release. And the third is how to lock your slide back. So first, the safety. There's an ambidextrous lever that sits directly in front of the hammer on the back of the PK380. Now, I've verified this with other people shooting my handgun. It is not intuitive. My buddy is like, okay, the lever's on S, so it's on safe, right? And I'm like, no, 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 no. That is not the case. So whatever letter is actually revealed is the status that the weapon is in. So if the S is revealed, meaning that the lever is actually on the F, the weapon is on safe, and vice versa. So just something to note, whatever letter is revealed is the status that it's in. Next, we're going to talk about the mag release. So typically on the grip of the pistol, there is a small button somewhere that you can press to release the magazine. Now, on the PK380, however, there is actually a lever, and that lever sits directly behind the trigger on the trigger guard, and that lever will hinge, and all you need to do is use your thumb is what I use, to press down, and it will eject the magazine. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is a Walther exclusive feature. I haven't seen it on any of the other handguns, but I do know it's common on at least the PPQ and the PK380. So just something to be aware of if you handle another Walther in the future, unless they change their design. I'm pretty sure it is a Walther mag release thing. The third thing I want to talk to you about is how to actually lock the slide back. So on a lot of pistols rather, if you rack the slide with an empty mag, the slide will remain back. The PK380 is no different. However, if I drop the mag and I rack the slide and I'm looking for a thing with my thumb to lock the slide back, there actually isn't a slide release or slide lock externally on the PK380. So I don't recommend doing this, but I am going to show you that you can actually lock the slide back without having a magazine inserted. There's a lever on the inside of the pistol that when an empty magazine is inserted, it pushes that lever up, and if you can open the action and get your finger in there, you can actually lift that up and it will keep the slide back. So those are the three features that I really wanted to cover with you guys. Now we're actually going to go into the field strip portion, how to take this thing apart and put it back together and where the pitfalls are. PK380. Now we're going to do both of those things. We're going to pull the slide back. We're going to visually inspect the chamber, make sure that the weapon is indeed empty, and then we're going to drop the hammer. The reason for this is because if the hammer is rearward, I've had problems taking this apart. I'm pretty sure it's not meant to be taken apart with the hammer pulled back. So that is something to note. Once you've done that, you will notice that there is a U-shaped clip that sits directly above the trigger on the frame. That is the takedown clip. Now, in order to move the takedown clip, you actually have to find the small hole that is directly in front of that. It's only on one side of the gun. And you need to use the takedown tool. So this is the Walther takedown tool. Hey, it even says Walther. If you need a replacement tool, I have links in the description to this, which comes with a partner double-sided tool that you can also keep in your range bag, for instance, in case you need to do emergency surgery. Regardless, these tools will work with the PK380. If you have the stock one, feel free to use that one. It's not necessary, but just wanted to put that out there. I effectively have 3 at this point now, 1 in my range bag, 2 at home. So I insert the tool into the hole to release the takedown clip. Now, inside that hole, you'll notice that there's a horizontal bar that's going to fit inside the little U-shaped portion on the takedown tool. You're going to seat that firmly, and you're going to rotate counterclockwise. You don't need to force it. You don't need to apply really any pressure to it. So once you've done that, you'll know it won't move anymore, and then you can pull down on the takedown clip. Now, when you do that, the slide will actually want to move forward a little bit. It's not under any extreme tension, so you'll be fine just pulling down on the clip and letting the handgun do its own thing. Or if you're really nervous, you can actually grip it in such a way that you're actually holding onto the slide so that it can't move as you pull the clip down, and then slowly release it and allow the slide to move forward. Now, I leave the tool inserted. I have not figured out a way to remove the stock takedown tool from the frame of the PK380. I can, however, remove the replacement tool that I have. I don't recommend it. It's not necessary to remove. And if you remove it, for some reason it gets in this awkward angle that I find difficult to reseat the tool without marring up the polymer of the frame. So just leave the tool inserted and then set that aside, and we can move on to the disassembly of the slide, barrel, guide rod, spring, etc. All right, so once you have the PK380 slide separated from the frame, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to press inward on the guide rod, lift up, and gently allow the guide rod and recoil spring to expand, essentially. Now, it's worth noting that this design is not super great. I think Walther did a very poor job in their design, and I've seen many firearms that have an integrated guide rod and recoil spring. However, on the PK380, it's under tension, and as soon as that guide rod clears the opening in the slide, all bets are off. It could shoot across the room. So make sure that you maintain control of the recoil spring and the guide rod and slowly let it move out. Once you've done that, you can set those aside. We'll talk about those later because I'm sure that's a pain point for a lot of people. And then you're gonna remove the barrel by just inching it forward a little bit, lifting up, and then removing it from the slide. And effectively, you'll have the frame, the slide, the recoil spring, the guide rod, and then the barrel. And you have completed the manufacturer's recommendations for field stripping a Walther PK380. Now, you could potentially go further. I don't. But at that point, the weapon is sufficiently broken down that you should be able to do regular cleaning and maintenance on it. Okay, so now you've field stripped the PK380. You've cleaned all of the parts, and it's time to put everything back together again and have a functioning handgun. Seems like you just do the opposite of what you did to take it apart, right? Yes and no. So easier said than done. This handgun was not designed optimally, I'll say. So you have three options that I'll cover in a little bit more detail when it comes to the guide rod and the recoil spring. So the first thing you're going to do is insert the barrel. It's relatively easy. There's really no hang-ups. You're just putting it back the way that it was. Now, the recoil spring and the guide rod are a different story. So on a lot of handguns, Glocks, my SIG, various different ones, the guide rod and the recoil spring are one integrated assembly. And it's very easy to get that into place. The problem with the PK380 is that they are two separate pieces, yet you have to compress the recoil spring while maintaining enough control of the guide rod to fit it into the slender hole that it fits through on the slide and seat it. A lot of people with weaker hands will struggle with this. For me, the first method was the easiest. So the first method involves bracing the guide rod against a table, or in my case, the cleaning mat or cleaning pad, and then manually using my fingers to compress the spring. Once I compress the spring, I pinch it and lift it up off of the table, and then use my offhand thumb on the back of the guide rod, and it functions essentially as the table. At that point, I can then manipulate it in such a way where I can seat the front of the guide rod in, and then keep pressure with my offhand thumb, and then seat the guide rod while the spring stays compressed. Essentially, it doesn't decompress. However, for a lot of people, that can be a problem if they have weak hands, fingers, just fine motor skills aren't super great. So one of the methods that I saw online said to insert a cleaning rod, and you insert that in through the slide. You put the spring over top of your cleaning rod, insert the guide rod at the end, brace it with your body, and you compress, and eventually you get it into place. So, two problems with that. The first problem is I have one cleaning rod that's a little bit thicker in diameter that will fit through the slide, but actually rubs and is difficult to get into the spring, the recoil spring. So, nixed that idea, and I grabbed my cleaning kit and got a different cleaning rod. This one did fit through the hole in the slide, and it easily fit into the spring, the recoil spring. It was also a little too loose, I think. So I have tried this with two different cleaning rods, and I have not been able to successfully insert the recoil spring and guide rod back into my PK380 using this method. Now, the reason for this is because the spring will actually bow or bind up as you near the end of the cleaning rod. So that last little bit where the actual guide rod has to go into the hole in the slide, as soon as the guide rod and the recoil or the cleaning rod are not aligned perfectly, you'll see that the spring starts to bend, and it's like it's taking the path of least resistance. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to go here. So if you have a cleaning rod that fits perfectly, then yes, by all means, use that method. So those are the first two methods. They're using all of the stock components, and depending on your level of hand strength, skill, I guess, you can use either one of those methods. Like I said, I wasn't able to even successfully do it with one of the methods. But the third method is one that is super simple and has saved me a ton of headaches, and that is to replace the guide rod and recoil spring that comes stock with the Walther PK380. And coincidentally, Galloway Precision offers a replacement assembly that is an integrated guide rod and recoil spring. You just line up the smaller end with the hole on the front of the slide, compress it ever so slightly, slide the back end of the guide rod into place, and bam, you're done. A lot of firearms, or handguns rather, use this. My SIG, Glocks, like there's so many. I don't know why Walther decided, like, hey, you know what? Let's be really difficult and make the users have to have like this test that they must complete in order to reassemble their PK380. Even it boggles my mind, because even the PPQ has the integrated guide rod and recoil spring. So I don't understand the logic behind it, but that's what they did. Anyways, it's like $25. You pick up this part from Galloway Precision. Super easy. It replaces, you know, the stock components, and you're on your way. I can't say anything more about. I can't sing its praises anymore. It does have its own set of issues. So one thing that I did notice is that the larger end of the guide rod actually unscrews, so you can actually separate the recoil spring from the guide rod portion of the assembly. There's also a little washer that goes down at the thin end that actually is the end that's inserted into the slide. Now, if you don't have the large screwed end in there securely, I can see where that would cause issue. Just make sure that that is in there snugly before you, whenever you're done cleaning and reassembling your handgun. It's a super inexpensive fix. To me, that small drawback is not worth the massive amounts of headache that I have with the stock recoil spring and guide rod. So to each their own. If you want to fight with the spring and the guide rod, by all means. You know, I've given you the tools, to be successful at doing it. There's really only two methods that I've seen that people describe as effective. If however you're willing to spend a little bit of extra cash, you can definitely replace it and save yourself a ton of headaches. So once you get everything back together, as far as the slide is concerned, you're just going to guide that onto the frame of the slide rails, and once you get towards the end, you're going to have to apply a little bit of pressure to get that spring to compress ever so slightly, so that you can actually fit the takedown clip back into place. Once the takedown clip is back into place, rotate the takedown tool clockwise, remove it, and your handgun should be back to working order. And that's really all there is to it. So again, the big hang-ups are having an alternate to the Walther takedown tool, which I will provide links to. There's also the integrated recoil spring and guide rod assembly from Galloway Precision that will replace your stock components and prevent you from having to fight with your stock stuff to get the handgun put back together again. Anyways, so I hope that this has given you guys some food for thought, has clarified some of the different processes for disassembling and reassembling your PK380, any ambiguities about the handgun. I hope I've clarified them. If you enjoyed the content, if you found it helpful, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. All of those things help me. And if you get a chance, or need some further detail, go ahead and check out the actual write-up that I did, which has probably some pretty decent pictures if there's things that you're wondering about that weren't necessarily addressed in enough detail in this video. So anyways, thank you guys very much, and I will catch you next time.